Hi, I'm Wolfgang. I'm one of the creators of the product field, and today I want to show you very briefly what the product field is and how to use it. The product field is a sense-making framework that is a tool for teams and for organizations to collaboratively make sense of what they're doing. In our case, product development. Now, product development is pretty complex stuff. As product people, it's our responsibility to deliver value to all stakeholders, even and especially if their interests and perspectives diverge. We have to focus on the stuff that creates this value, even and especially if everybody has their own opinion about what this stuff is. And in order to make all this work, to even have a fruitful discussion about it, we have to help everyone, designers, developers, marketers, managers, speak the same language. That's where a sense-making framework comes handy. By organizing communication and facilitating discussion, it helps your team and your organization to navigate the complexity of your product, to align the perspectives of all stakeholders, to find your focus, and finally to make the right decisions. That is, in a nutshell, what the product field is for. Alright, so let's get to know this product field thing. We'll start with the canvas you use to frame your work in product development. There's an important aside here: always draw the product field canvas yourself. It makes the framework much more tangible, and at least for me it's really helpful to slow down a bit and become calmer before I really dig into the complexity of product development with teams and stakeholders. So, at the center of everything, of course, is your product. That is the concrete, physical or digital product or service you want to create and you want to market and you want people to use. In order to introduce this product, you have to get it from the inside, from your organization, from the lab, from the team, to the outside, to the users, the customers. And at the same time, you have to realize the purpose of the product in a specific implementation. So these are the two dimensions we'll use to organize everything about your product. It's the introduction dimension from the inside to the outside, and the realization dimension from abstract to concrete, from the purpose to the implementation of the product. Along these two dimensions, we will understand all aspects that are involved in product development. At the core, your product embodies a value proposition. This is what we map here at the core of the canvas. The value proposition consists of a solution your product has for a certain problem. If your product doesn't solve a problem, you really don't have a product at all. Now, this solution to a specific problem has to have something unique, something special about it that sets it apart from the alternatives. So part of the value proposition is also the uniqueness of the product that sets it apart from the available alternatives. Once you can describe this, how your product solves a certain problem in a unique way when compared to the alternatives, you have defined the core of your product. Of course, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. The problem is something people have, and these people are the users of your product. And the users have the problem you are solving with your product when they pursue certain motivations, stuff they want to achieve, they want to do. The users can be identical, but don't have to be identical with the customers. The customers are the people that you sell your product to, the people that pay money for using it, and sometimes they are the people that pay for other people using the product. In order to get your product to the customers, you have to have certain means of distribution. This encompasses all the means you have to use to get the product physically to your customers, so for example logistics or sales, but it also means getting the customers to know about your product. So it's also about marketing and about attention. In order to have something to distribute in the first place, of course you have to produce it. So production creates the stuff that can be distributed in the first place, and in order to produce your solution, you make use of certain enablers. These are resources at your disposal that you can use to build the product and to get it out there. It can be financial assets, it can be knowledge, it can be patents, it can be certain technologies, anything that enable you to produce your product in the first place. How you use these enablers is something that will be determined by the drivers of your product development. These are the people in charge. These are the people that drive the project forward, and the drivers also describe what's special about these people, what their qualities are, how they are good leaders, and how they manage to keep all this stuff together. And finally, these drivers pursue certain goals that drive product development and that define when and how your product is successful in a business sense. So now we see that the value proposition is embedded in a context that pretty much defines how your problem can be solved, how the uniqueness makes the product better than the alternatives, how you use enablers, how you drive your product, how the goals match motivations, which users have these motivations, if the users are the same people as the customers, how you distribute your product to the customers, and what you need to produce the product in the first place pretty much defines whether your product will be successful or not. And one last step, and then we have a complete canvas, is if we look at these areas taken together. If we look at problems that users face when pursuing certain motivations, when you solve these problems, that's when you create value with your product. So this quadrant taken together describes the value you create with your product for your users. If you look at how you distribute your product to customers and make it more successful or give it greater reach than the alternatives, this is basically the market situation you are in, the competition you face, and the stuff you have to do to reach your customers. Down here, when you look at what enablers you have in order to produce your solutions, you're talking about the resources at your disposal. What you and your organization can put into such a project, whether financial resources or knowledge or technology. And finally, if you look at how a driver makes sure a uniqueness in the product expresses the goals that stand behind the product, that pretty much is the idea that's embodied in this product. So this quadrant describes the idea that is expressed in the product. And that's the product field canvas. You have the product, the concrete, tangible product or service at the center. you have the value proposition at the core, and you have all the context factors that influence and define whether your product will be successful and whether it creates real value, it's competitive in the market, it makes good use of your resources, and expresses a valuable and tangible business idea. The product field canvas helps you frame your work in product development. It provides a shared vocabulary for your team and for all the stakeholders, and it provides a visual representation of all the aspects involved. Once you have this kind of frame, you build on that with 3 more steps when you work with the product field. Step number 2 is map. You map all the existing knowledge about your product, all the information you have about users, about customers, about your value proposition, as well as about the resources and the idea that are behind the product. This step helps you to create a shared understanding of the situation you are in and make sure that everybody is on the same page. Step number 3 is check. In step number 3, you look for connections, for tensions, for gaps between aspects of your product development, and thus make sure that everything fits together and makes sense. Step number 4 is find. In step number 4, you discover strengths and weaknesses, risks and potentials, and based on that, you decide what's most important for you and your team to do to make the right decisions to create value for all stakeholders. That, in a nutshell, is the product field and how you use it. You can find more about how to use it in the Quick Start Guide. You can find lots more of information about how the product field evolved, how it's constructed, and the theory behind it in the reference guide. And of course, you can ask us questions and tell us about your experiences on Twitter and on Slack. We're really looking forward to hearing from you, and we're looking forward to you developing better products.